The transport ship landed on Kepler Prime with a loud thud. Jake Morrison looked out the small window and saw the biggest building he had ever seen. The Galactic Military Academy stretched across the horizon like a metal mountain. Its silver walls reached up to touch the purple sky of the alien world. "This is it," Jake said to his team. He was 25 years old and had been a soldier on Earth for 6 years. Now he was the leader of 20 human cadets who would try to become galactic warriors. Amy Carter sat next to him. She was a pilot who could fly anything with wings or engines. Her blonde hair was tied back in a tight ponytail. "Look at the size of that place," she whispered. "How many aliens do you think are in there?" "Too many to count," said Ryan Brooks from across the aisle. He was an expert with bombs and weapons. His thick arms were covered in scars from his training back home. "I hope they're friendly." Lisa Grant checked her medical bag for the 10th time. She was the team's doctor and always worried about everyone's safety. "I brought extra supplies," she said. "We don't know what alien diseases might be. Here." Ben Parker had his nose buried in a tablet computer. He was studying alien battle tactics and had read every book about galactic warfare. "According to my research, there are 47 different species at this academy," he said without looking up. "Most of them are much stronger than humans." The ship's door opened with a hiss. Hot air rushed in, carrying strange smells that none of the humans recognized. Jake stood up first and grabbed his bag. "Remember what we practiced?" he told his team. "We represent all of humanity here. Let's make Earth proud." The humans walked down the metal ramp and stepped onto alien soil for the first time. The ground was covered in purple grass that felt soft under their boots. Strange blue flowers grew in neat rows along the walkway. In the distance, they could hear sounds they had never heard before. "Welcome to Kepler Prime," said a voice behind them. The humans turned around and saw their first alien instructor. He was tall and thin with green skin and 4 arms. His name tag said Instructor Zaltek in letters that glowed with soft light. "You are the humans," Zaltek said. It was not a question. His voice sounded like wind blowing through metal pipes. "You are smaller than I expected." Jake stepped forward. "Yes, sir. I am Squad Leader Jake Morrison. We are ready to begin training." Zaltek looked at the 20 humans with his large yellow eyes. "Follow me. You will meet the other cadets and receive your room assignments." They walked through the academy's main entrance. The ceiling was so high that Jake could barely see the top. Strange alien writing covered the walls in bright colors. Floating platforms carried students between different levels of the building. Humans saw their first alien cadets in the main hallway. A group of 8-foot-tall creatures with rock-like skin were talking in deep, rumbling voices. Their muscles bulged under their uniforms. Jake realized these must be the Krathari warriors he had read about. "Those are big," Amy whispered. Next, to the Krathari stood several bug-like aliens with 6 arms and shiny black shells. They moved incredibly fast, their heads turning to track every movement around them. These were the Zephyrians, famous for their lightning reflexes. Near a water fountain, blue-skinned aliens with gills on their necks were talking in clicking sounds. The Nephari came from a world with 3 times Earth's gravity. Every movement they made looked effortless, but Jake knew they could probably crush steel with their bare hands. All the alien cadets stopped talking when they saw the humans. Some pointed, others laughed. A few just stared with curious expressions. Look it. The tiny ones, said a Krathari cadet in broken galactic common language. Are those the humans we heard about? They look like children, clicked a Zephyrian. How can such weak creatures be warriors? Jake felt his team tense up behind him. Lisa moved closer to Amy. Ryan's hands slowly formed fists. Ben finally looked. Up from his tablet, his face pale, Instructor Zaltek led them deeper into the academy. They passed training rooms where aliens practiced combat. In one room, Krathari cadets lifted weights that would crush a human. In another, Zephyrians moved so fast, they were just blurs of motion. Your sleeping quarters are on level 7, Zaltek explained as they entered an elevator. Meals are served 3 times per day in the main cafeteria. Training begins tomorrow, at dawn. The elevator rose smoothly through the building. Through the transparent walls, the humans could see hundreds of alien students going about their daily activities. They all looked so strong, so confident, so ready for war. Are we making a mistake? Lisa asked quietly. No, Jake said firmly. We belong here just as much as they do. But inside, he was not so sure. The other species looked like they were born to be soldiers. Their bodies were natural weapons. Their strength was obvious to anyone who looked at them. The elevator stopped, and Zaltek led them down a long hallway. These are your rooms, he said, pointing to a row of doors. Each human will share a room with a cadet from another species. This is Academy policy. Jake was assigned to room with a young Krathari named Roktar. When they met, the alien towered over Jake like a stone giant. Roktar looked down at his new human roommate and shook his massive head. I hoped for a real warrior, Roktar said in his deep voice. Instead, I get a fragile little creature who will probably cry for his mother. That night, Jake lay in his bed and listened to Roktar's loud snoring. Through the window, he could see 3 moons hanging in the alien sky. Everything here was different from Earth. Everything was bigger, stronger, more dangerous. He thought about his team and wondered if they were having the same doubts. Amy was probably studying star charts for tomorrow's flight training. Ryan was likely taking apart and rebuilding his equipment. Lisa was checking and rechecking her medical supplies. Ben was reading more books about alien warfare. They had all worked so hard to get here. Earth's government had chosen them from millions of volunteers. They had trained for 2 years just for the chance to prove that humans could be galactic warriors. But now, surrounded by creatures that could tear them apart without effort, Jake wondered if humanity had made a terrible mistake. Maybe humans really were too weak for this place. Maybe they should have stayed on Earth where they belonged. A loud crash from somewhere in the building reminded Jake that he was far from home, on an alien world, surrounded by beings who already saw him as inferior. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. The alarm bell rang before dawn. Jake jumped out of bed and saw Roktar already putting on his uniform. The massive Krathari moved with surprising grace for someone so large. Try not to embarrass yourself today, little human, Roktar said as he left the room. Jake quickly got dressed and met his team in the hallway. They all looked tired and nervous. Amy's usually perfect hair was messy. Ryan kept checking his equipment belt. Lisa carried her medical bag everywhere. Ben had dark circles under his eyes from staying up too late reading. How did everyone sleep? Jake asked. My roommate told me humans smell funny, Amy said. Then he spent an hour showing me how sharp his claws are. Mine kept asking if I was old enough to be away from my parents, Ryan added. I think he was serious. They walked to the main training hall together. The room was enormous, with high ceilings and equipment that looked like it was designed for giants. Alien cadets were already warming up. The Krathari lifted weights that weighed more than entire humans. The Zephyrians moved through obstacle courses so fast they looked like ghosts. A new instructor stood at the front of the room. He was the biggest Krathari Jake had ever seen. Scars covered his rocky skin like a map of old battles. His eyes glowed red in the dim light. The name tag on his chest read, Instructor HFY. "Listen up, cadets," HFY's voice boomed across the room. "I am your combat instructor. For the next 6 months, I will try to turn you into warriors. Some of you will succeed. Others will fail and go home in shame." His red eyes found the group of humans. "I see we have some new species joining us this year. How interesting." The way he said interesting made Jake's skin crawl. It sounded like HFY thought they were bugs he wanted to step on. "Today we begin with strength testing," HFY announced. "Each cadet will lift the standard military weight. Those who cannot meet the minimum requirements will be marked for additional training." The alien cadets lined up at different weight stations. Jake watched a Krathari cadet easily lift a bar loaded with metal plates. When Jake tried to count the weight, he stopped at 800 pounds. The Krathari made it look like lifting a pencil. A Nefari cadet was next. Her blue skin glistened as she lifted even more weight without breaking a sweat. The Zephyrians moved so fast, Jake could barely see them grab the bar before it was over their heads. "Humans, you are next," HFY called out. Jake stepped up to the weight station. The bar was loaded with the minimum weight for the test. He grabbed it with both hands and pulled with everything he had. The bar moved up slowly, his muscles screaming with effort. He managed to lift it to his chest before his arms gave out. The weight crashed back to the floor with a loud bang. "Pathetic," HFY said loud enough for everyone to hear. "The human cannot even meet minimum standards." Amy tried next. She was strong for a human pilot, but the weight was too much for her smaller frame. She managed to lift it a few inches before dropping it. Ryan did better than the others. His arms were thick from years of handling heavy equipment. He got the weight halfway up before his strength failed. The bar fell with another crash. Lisa and Ben did not even try. They knew they could not lift something that heavy. "As I suspected," HFY said to the whole class, "humans are too weak for real military training. Perhaps they should stick to desk jobs." Some of the alien cadets laughed. Jake felt his face turn red with embarrassment and anger. The next test was running. The aliens ran around a track that circled the academy grounds. The Nefari moved like blue rockets, their powerful legs eating up distance. The Zephyrians darted back and forth like they were dancing. Even the heavy Krathari moved faster than any human could run. The humans finished last in every race. Jake's lungs burned as he crossed the finish line. Amy collapsed on the grass, gasping for air. Ryan's face was bright red with effort. "Once again, the humans disappoint," HFY announced. "Speed is essential in combat. How can you fight an enemy? You cannot catch?" More alien laughter filled the air. Jake noticed that some of the other cadets were starting to look at humans like they were a joke. Combat training was even worse. HFY paired each human with an alien cadet for sparring practice. Jake found himself facing a Krathari who outweighed him by 200 pounds. The alien's rocky skin was harder than armor. "Try not to break the little one," HFY told the Krathari with a cruel smile. The match lasted 10 seconds. The Krathari moved faster than Jake expected. One punch sent Jake flying across the mat. He hit the ground hard and stayed down, trying to catch his breath. Amy fought a Zephyrian who had 6 arms. Every time she tried to block one attack, 2 more hits got through. She ended up on the ground with bruises covering her arms. Ryan lasted longer against his Nepheri opponent, but the alien's strength was too much. When the blue-skinned cadet grabbed Ryan's arm, it was like being caught in a machine. Ryan tapped out before his bones broke. "This is embarrassing," Vexhai said as he looked down at the defeated humans. "I have seen younglings fight better than this. How did such weak creatures ever survive long enough to reach the stars?" The alien cadets were no longer laughing. Now they looked at the humans with something worse than amusement. They looked at them with pity. After training, the humans sat together in the cafeteria. The alien food was strange, but it tasted good enough. Other cadets sat at tables around them, talking in their various languages. None of them invited the humans to join their conversations. "This is not going well," Ben said quietly. "We just need more time to adjust," Jake replied, but his voice lacked confidence. "More time to get beaten up, you mean?" Amy said. She had an ice pack pressed against her shoulder. "Maybe we do not belong here," Lisa whispered. "Maybe the instructor is right. Maybe humans are too weak for this place." Jake wanted to argue, but he could not find the words. Everything they had seen today proved that humans were the weakest species at the academy. They could not lift the weights, could not run fast enough, could not fight without getting hurt. A group of Krathari cadets walked past their table. "Look at the tiny warriors," one of them said in Galactic Common. "They look so sad. Did the training hurt their feelings?" "Maybe they need to call their mothers," another Krathari added. "I heard humans cry when they get scared." The Krathari laughed as they walked away. Jake's hands formed fists under the table, but he forced himself to stay calm. Fighting would only make things worse. That night, Jake lay in bed listening to Rocktar tell another cadet about the human's poor performance. "The little one tried so hard to lift the weight," Rocktar said. "I almost felt sorry for him. Almost." Through the thin walls, Jake could hear similar conversations happening in other rooms. The humans had become the Academy's entertainment. Everyone wanted to hear stories about how badly they had failed. Jake stared at the ceiling and wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. Maybe humans really were not ready for galactic warfare. Maybe they should pack up and go home before someone got seriously hurt. But then he thought about Earth. Billions of people were counting on them to succeed. This was humanity's chance to prove they belonged among the stars. If they failed here, humans might never get another opportunity. Jake closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring more training, more tests, and probably more humiliation. But he was not ready to give up yet. None of them were. Outside his window, the 3 moons of Kepler Prime shone down on the Academy. Somewhere in the building, hundreds of alien cadets slept peacefully, confident in their strength and abilities. But in the human quarters, 5 young people from Earth lay awake, wondering if they were strong enough for the challenges ahead. 3 months had passed since the humans arrived at the Academy. Jake looked at himself in the mirror and saw a different person than the one who had stepped off the transport ship. His face was thinner, marked with small scars from training, fights. His eyes looked tired and angry. The daily routine had become a nightmare. Every morning brought new tests designed to show how weak humans were. Every afternoon meant more combat training where they got beaten by stronger aliens. Every evening they sat alone in the cafeteria while other cadets whispered and pointed at them. Jake's team was falling apart. Amy barely spoke anymore. She spent most of her time staring out windows, probably thinking about flying away from this place. Ryan had become quiet and mean, snapping at anyone who tried to talk to him. Lisa jumped at every loud noise and carried her medical supplies everywhere like a security blanket. Ben had stopped reading his books about alien warfare. What was the point when humans could never match alien strength? Instructor HFY made everything worse. He seemed to enjoy finding new ways to embarrass the humans. During weapons training, he gave them guns designed for much larger hands. During tactical exercises, he ignored every suggestion the humans made. During physical tests, he made them compete against the strongest alien cadets. Perhaps humans would be better suited for cleaning duties, HFY had said yesterday after Ryan failed another strength test. I am sure the academy needs janitors. The alien cadets no longer bothered hiding their opinions. The Krathari called humans soft, meat in their own language. The Zephyrians clicked jokes about slow little mammals. The Nepheri simply ignored humans completely, as if they were not worth noticing. Today was supposed to be different. Today was the team combat exercise, where mixed groups would work together to complete military objectives. Jake hoped this would be their chance to show what humans could really do. But it went wrong from the very beginning. Jake's team was assigned to work with 3 Krathari cadets, 2 Zephyrians, and 1 Nephari. Their mission was to capture a defended position using tactics and teamwork. Jake had studied the problem all night and developed a plan that could work. We should approach from the east, Jake explained to the group. The defenses are weaker there, and we can use the terrain for cover. The Krathari team leader, a cadet named Gorth, laughed. Humans do not give orders to warriors. We will attack from the front and crush the defenders. But that will get half of us killed, Ben argued, showing his tactical analysis on a tablet. Look at these defensive positions. A frontal assault is suicide. Cowardice, Gorth spat. Humans always look for the easy path. True warriors face their enemies directly. Amy tried a different approach. What if we split into 2 groups? The Krathari can attack from the front to draw their attention, while the rest of us flank around behind them. The small one speaks, said one of the Zephyrians. How amusing. Do you also have opinions about military strategy, little human? Actually, yes, Ryan said, his voice getting dangerous. We have lots of opinions. Maybe you should listen to them. Or what? Gorth stepped closer to Ryan, using his massive size. To intimidate. What will the weak human do to me? Jake moved between them before a fight could start. Let's just focus on the mission. We can argue about tactics later. But the damage was done. During the exercise, the alien cadets completely ignored the humans. They charged straight at the defenders just like Gorth wanted. The result was exactly what Jake had predicted, a complete disaster. Half the team was killed by defensive fire, and they failed the mission completely. Afterward, Instructor HFY gathered all the teams to discuss their performance. When he got to Jake's group, his red eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Team 7 failed because they allowed inferior members to disrupt their natural fighting instincts, he announced to everyone. This is what happens when you try to include weak species in military operations. Jake felt something snap inside his chest. 3 months of insults. 3 months of being treated like garbage. 3 months of watching his team slowly break down. He stood up before he could stop himself. Instructor HFY, I request permission to speak privately with you about training methods. The big Krathari looked surprised. No cadet had ever requested a private meeting before. Very well, human. Meet me in my office after evening meal. That night, Jake walked through the empty hallways to HFY's office. The instructor was reading reports when Jake knocked on the door. "Enter," Vexhi's voice rumbled. The office was decorated with weapons from dozens of different worlds. Battle honors and military awards covered the walls. Jake realized he was looking at the accomplishments of a real warrior, someone who had fought in actual wars. "Speak," Vexhi said without looking up from his reports. "Sir, I want to discuss the hostile environment that has developed toward human cadets." "Hostile environment?" Vexhi finally looked at Jake. "You mean realistic training conditions?" "I mean the systematic humiliation and exclusion of human cadets from normal academy activities." Vexhi leaned back in his chair. "You think you deserve special treatment because you are weak? I think we deserve the same opportunities as other cadets to prove our worth. You have had 3 months to prove your worth. You have failed every test, lost every fight, and contributed nothing of value to your teams." Vexhi's red eyes burned with contempt. "Face reality, human. Your species is not suited for warfare." Jake felt his hands shake with anger. "You don't know anything about humans. You've been setting us up to fail from day one. I set the same standards for all cadets. It is not my fault humans cannot meet them. The standards are designed for species with natural advantages. You never test intelligence, creativity, or adaptability. You only care about raw strength and speed." Vexhi stood up, his massive frame towering over Jake. "Because those are the qualities that matter in combat. Strength defeats weakness. Speed defeats slowness. This is the law of nature." "What about determination? What about the refusal to surrender? What about fighting smart instead of just fighting hard?" "Philosophy for the defeated," Vexhi said with disgust. "Weakness demands no accommodation. If humans cannot adapt to reality, they should withdraw from this academy and return to their safe little planet." Jake stared at the alien instructor and realized that nothing he said would matter. Vexhi had already decided humans were worthless. He would never give them a fair chance to prove otherwise. "Is that your final position, sir?" Jake asked quietly. "It is the only position that matters. Dismissed, human." Jake left the office with his jaw clenched and his fists tight. He walked back to his room where Roktar was sharpening his claws. "You look angry, little human," Roktar observed. "Did someone hurt your feelings again?" Jake did not answer. He lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. 3 months of being called weak. 3 months of watching his team lose confidence. 3 months of being treated like they did not belong the next morning. Brought the worst exercise yet. Vexhi announced that today would be a demonstration of species capabilities. Each alien race would show off their natural advantages for the entire academy to see. The Krathari displayed their incredible strength by lifting massive stone blocks. The Zephyrians showed their speed by completing obstacle courses in seconds. The Nefari demonstrated their endurance by running for hours without stopping. When it came time for the human demonstration, hundreds of alien cadets gathered to watch. Jake could see the amusement in their eyes. They were expecting another entertaining failure. Vexhi stood in front of the crowd with a cruel smile on his scarred face. "And now, our human cadets will demonstrate their unique capabilities." He paused for effect, letting the alien laughter build. "Perhaps they can show us the proper technique for surrender, or demonstrate their skill at running away from superior opponents." More laughter filled the training hall. Jake saw Amy's face turn red with shame. Lisa looked like she wanted to disappear. Ben stared at his feet. Ryan's hands were forming fists. Jake stepped forward, his 3 months of anger finally reaching the boiling point. With respect, Instructor, you don't understand what makes humans dangerous. The laughter stopped. Every alien in the room leaned forward to hear what the small human would say next. Vexhi's red eyes narrowed with anticipation. Enlighten me, little primate. What could possibly make your pathetic species a threat to anyone? Jake looked around the room at hundreds of alien faces. All of them expected him to back down, to apologize, to admit that humans were weak and worthless. Instead, he looked directly into Vexhi's eyes and said the words that would change everything. You want to know what makes humans dangerous, Instructor? We don't know when to quit. The training hall was completely silent. Every alien cadet, every instructor, every academy worker had stopped what they were doing to listen. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the room, facing Instructor Vexhi, with 3 months of rage burning in his eyes. Vexhi threw back his massive head and laughed. The sound echoed off the walls like thunder. You don't know when to quit? That is not a strength, little human. That is stupidity. Other alien cadets joined in the laughter. The Crethari slapped their stone-like hands together in amusement. The Zephyrians clicked their approval. Even the usually quiet Nefari seemed entertained. Knowing when to quit is wisdom, Vexhi continued, his red eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. A true warrior understands his limitations. He knows when he is beaten and accepts defeat with honor. Jake took a step closer to the massive instructor. His human teammates watched nervously from the side. Amy's face was pale. Ryan's jaw was tight with tension. Lisa gripped her medical bag like it was a weapon. Ben had finally looked up from his tablet. You think quitting is wisdom? Jake asked, his voice growing louder. You think accepting defeat is honorable? When facing a superior opponent, yes. Your species is weak, slow, fragile, and completely unsuited for warfare. Any intelligent being would recognize this and... Jake's fist connected with Vexhi's jaw before the instructor could finish his sentence. The sound of the impact was like a hammer hitting stone. Vexhi's massive head snapped to the side. The 8-foot-tall alien stumbled backward, his red eyes wide with shock. A thin line of dark blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. The entire hall erupted in gasps and shouts. No cadet had ever struck an instructor. The breach of military protocol was unthinkable. Some aliens stood up from their seats. Others backed away in fear. But Jake was not finished. You call us weak? He shouted, following up with another punch that caught Vexhi in the ribs. We survived ice ages that lasted 10,000 years. We climbed out of caves with nothing but rocks and sticks. Vexhi tried to grab Jake with his massive hands, but the human was faster than expected. Jake ducked under the alien's arms and landed an uppercut to his stomach. You call us fragile? Jake continued, his voice rising above the chaos in the room. We survived plagues that killed half our population. We fought wars that burned entire continents. Other instructors rushed toward the fight, but Jake's human teammates moved to intercept them. Amy Carter used her pilot training to read the movement patterns of approaching aliens. She slid between a Zephyrian instructor and the main fight, her smaller size making her hard to grab. Ryan Brooks spotted a Nefari instructor coming from the left. He remembered his demolitions training about finding weak points in structures. A quick strike to the alien's knee joint sent the blue-skinned instructor stumbling. You think we quit when things get hard? Jake landed another punch on Vexhi's scarred face. We split atoms and used them as weapons. We built rockets and shot ourselves into space on controlled explosions. Lisa Grant used her medical knowledge to target nerve clusters on a Crethari instructor. Her precise pressure point strikes caused temporary paralysis in the alien's left arm. She was small, but she knew exactly where to hit to cause the most disruption. Ben Parker finally put down his tablet and joined the fight. He had studied alien anatomy for months. He knew that Zephyrian exoskeletons had joints that could be hyperextended. His tactical knowledge turned into physical action for the first time. We don't quit because we don't know how. Jake caught Vexhi's swinging arm and used the alien's own momentum against him. When the dinosaurs ruled our planet, we were tiny mammals hiding in holes. When the ice came, we made fire. When the diseases came, we made medicine. The alien cadets watched in stunned amazement as 20 humans held their own against superior numbers and physical strength. The humans were not stronger or faster, but they fought with a desperate determination that none of the aliens had ever seen before. Jake grabbed a training weapon from a nearby rack and swung it at Vexhi's legs. The instructor fell to one knee, still trying to comprehend what was happening. "You want to know what makes humans dangerous?" Jake yelled. "We turned predators into pets. We tamed lightning and made it carry our voices across the world." Amy was using furniture as barriers, making it impossible for larger aliens to corner her. Her pilot reflexes let her anticipate their movements and stay one step ahead. "We looked at birds and said we could do that better," she shouted, while dodging a Krathari's grab. "So we built machines that could fly faster than any living thing." Ryan had found a toolbox and was using wrenches and hammers as weapons. "We looked at the deepest oceans and said we wanted to see the bottom," he called out while blocking an alien's attack. "We looked at the highest mountains and said we wanted to stand on top." Lisa was treating this like a massive emergency medical situation. She moved from human to human, checking for injuries and applying quick first aid. "We saw diseases that killed millions and said no more," she yelled while bandaging Jake's knuckles. "We saw death itself and said we could do better." Trey was finally using all his book knowledge in real combat. "We saw the stars and said we belonged among them," he shouted while helping Amy flip a table for cover. "Every other species evolved to fit their world. We evolved to change our world to fit us." Vexhi tried to stand up, but Jake hit him again. "You think strength is about lifting heavy things? We move mountains to build our cities. You think speed matters? We broke the sound barrier just to see if we could." The alien instructor's red eyes were no longer filled with contempt. For the first time, Vexhi was looking at humans with something approaching respect, and maybe just a little bit of fear. "We turned deserts into gardens and frozen wastelands into homes," Jake continued, his voice hoarse from shouting. "We looked at every impossible thing in our universe and said, 'Watch us do it anyway.'" Security forces finally arrived to restore order. But by then, the message was clear. The 20 humans had fought against overwhelming odds and held their own through pure determination and tactical thinking. Jake stood over the fallen Vexhi, breathing hard, his uniform torn and bloody. The massive instructor sat on the floor, holding his swollen jaw and staring up at the small human who had just given him the fight of his life. "That," Jake said quietly, "is what makes humans dangerous. We're too stupid to know when we're beaten, and too stubborn to care." The training hall was silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. The alien cadets were no longer looking at humans with amusement or pity. They were looking at them with the recognition that perhaps they had underestimated these small, determined creatures from Earth. Vexhi touched his swollen jaw and winced. For the first time since the humans had arrived, he spoke to them without contempt in his voice. "Impressive," he said quietly. Perhaps there is more to your species than I realized. Security officers surrounded the humans, but they did not resist. The fight was over, and they had made their point. Jake looked at his team and saw something that had been missing for 3 months. Pride. Whatever happened next, they had proven that humans would not go quietly into the night. They would fight, they would struggle, and they would never surrender, even if it meant breaking a few alien jaws along the way. Jake Morrison sat in the Academy's holding cell, waiting for his military tribunal. His knuckles were bandaged, his uniform was torn, and his face showed several new bruises. But for the first time in 3 months, he felt like himself again. Charges against him were serious. Assault on a superior officer, inciting a riot, and conduct unbecoming a cadet. Any one of these could get him expelled from the Academy and banned from galactic space forever. Altogether, they might mean a one-way trip back to Earth in shame. His teammates sat in the cells next to him. Amy was humming an old Earth song under her breath. Ryan was doing push-ups to stay calm. Lisa was organizing her medical supplies for the 100th time. Ben was reading a book about galactic law, trying to find something that might help their case. "Do you think it was worth it?" Amy asked quietly. Jake looked at her through the bars between their cells. "Ask me again in a few hours." The tribunal was held in the Academy's main courtroom. 5 senior officers from different species sat behind a curved desk that looked like it was carved from a single piece of stone. Jake recognized Admiral Thexgol, a Krathari commander with more battle scars than Vex-High. Next to him sat General Yalneth, a Zephyrian whose compound eyes seemed to look in all directions at once. Jake and his team stood at attention in the center of the room. They wore their best uniforms, but the fresh bandages and bruises told the story of their recent fight. "Cadet Morrison!" Admiral Thexgol's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You are charged with assault on Instructor Vex-High, inciting other cadets to violence, and conduct unbecoming a military cadet. How do you plead?" "Guilty to all charges, sir," Jake replied without hesitation. A murmur went through the courtroom. Most cadets tried to make excuses or blame others. Jake's direct honesty surprised everyone. "You understand the seriousness of these charges?" General Yalneth's voice sounded like metal scraping against metal. "Yes, sir. I accept full responsibility for my actions and those of my team." "Very well. The tribunal will now hear testimony regarding this incident." The first witness was another instructor who had seen the fight. He described the violence in clinical detail, making it sound like the humans had lost their minds and attacked without reason. The second witness was a Krathari cadet who had been in the training hall. He told the court that the humans seemed unstable and dangerous to themselves and others. Jake listened to the testimony and felt his hopes sinking. Every witness made them sound like violent criminals who could not be trusted around civilized beings. Then something unexpected happened. "I request permission to testify on behalf of the human cadets," a voice called from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Gorth, the Krathari cadet who had been Jake's partner in the failed team exercise. He walked to the front of the room with measured steps. "You may proceed," Admiral Thexgol said with surprise. "I have worked with human Jake Morrison on several training missions," Gorth began. "I ignored his tactical suggestions because I believed humans were too weak to contribute meaningful ideas." The Krathari cadet stood straighter. "I was wrong. In our last exercise, Morrison's plan would have succeeded. My plan failed because I valued strength over intelligence." More murmurs filled the courtroom. A Krathari admitting he was wrong was almost unheard of. Furthermore, Gorth continued, I have observed human cadets solving problems that stumped cadets from other species. They think differently than we do. Sometimes that is exactly what a military unit needs. Another alien cadet stood up. I also request permission to testify. Then another, and another. Soon, dozens of alien cadets were lining up to speak on behalf of the humans. They told stories about human creativity during tactical exercises, about their determination in the face of overwhelming odds, about their ability to keep fighting when larger, stronger beings had already given up. A Zephyrian cadet talked about Amy's piloting skills during flight training. She cannot fly as fast as we can, but she finds routes through asteroid fields that we would never attempt. Her spatial reasoning is remarkable. A Nefari cadet spoke about Ryan's technical knowledge. He understands explosives and engineering in ways that complement our natural strength. Together, we accomplished more than either species could alone. Even, some of the alien instructors testified. They admitted that human performance data, when properly analyzed, showed remarkable improvement curves and adaptation rates. But the biggest surprise came when Instructor Vex-High himself walked to the witness stand. The massive Krathari's jaw was still visibly swollen. Purple bruises covered the left side of his face, where Jake's punches had landed. When he spoke, his voice was slightly slurred. I wish to testify about the incident and my role in creating the conditions that led to it. Admiral Thexgol leaned forward with interest. Proceed, Instructor. For 3 months, I treated the human cadets as inferior beings. I designed training exercises to highlight their physical limitations rather than identify their strengths. I encouraged other cadets to view humans as weak and worthless. Vex-High's red eyes found Jake in the courtroom. I was guilty of the worst, kind of prejudice. I judged them by Krathari standards, instead of recognizing that strength takes many forms. The instructor touched his swollen jaw. Cadet Morrison's attack was inappropriate and against regulations, but his underlying point was correct. I had failed to give humans a fair opportunity to prove their worth. What is your recommendation regarding punishment? General Yalneth asked. Cadet Morrison should face consequences for striking a superior officer, but the humans should not be expelled from the academy. They have qualities that could benefit the Galactic Defense Force if properly developed. The tribunal deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, Admiral Thexgol looked serious, but not angry. Cadet Morrison, you have been found guilty of all charges. However, the court recognizes that exceptional circumstances led to your actions. Your punishment is reduced to additional training duties and a formal reprimand. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. Furthermore, the Admiral continued, Instructor Vex-High has requested permission to modify the training curriculum to better accommodate diverse species' strengths. This request is granted. The tribunal also notes that the human cadets have demonstrated valuable qualities that were not being properly evaluated. New assessment protocols will be developed to identify these strengths in future training. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood at attention during graduation ceremonies. His human team stood beside him, all wearing the blue uniforms of Galactic Defense Force officers. They had not only completed the academy program, they had excelled in their final months. Jake was named squad leader of a mixed-species unit that included 3 Krathari warriors, 2 Zephyrians, and 1 Nefari. Amy became the unit's primary pilot and navigation specialist. Ryan was assigned as technical support and demolitions expert. Lisa served as the team's medical officer and diplomatic liaison. Ben became their intelligence analyst and strategic planner. Several alien cadets specifically requested assignment to human-led units. They had learned that humans brought something unique to military operations: the ability to find solutions when conventional approaches failed. Instructor Vexhai had become the Academy's leading expert on human military potential. His jaw had healed, but he kept a small scar as a reminder of his lesson in humility. He often told new classes about the day he learned that strength came in many forms. "I once believed that military power was only about physical strength and natural weapons," he would say, touching the scar on his jaw. "Then I met a species that conquered their world not through superior bodies, but through superior determination." During the graduation ceremony, Jake watched hundreds of new officers from dozens of species take their oaths of service. Humans were no longer the strange newcomers who did not belong. They were valued members of a galactic community. Admiral Thex Gull presented Jake with his officer's commission. "Your species has brought something important to our military tradition," the old Krathari said quietly. "You have taught us that the most dangerous warriors are not always the strongest ones. Sometimes they are the ones who simply refuse to quit." That evening, Jake and his team celebrated at the Academy's graduation dinner. Alien officers who had once mocked them now sat at their table, sharing stories and making plans for future missions. Rocktar, Jake's former roommate, raised a toast. "To the humans," he said in his deep voice, "who taught us that size does not matter. Strength is not everything, and the most important weapon a warrior can carry is the refusal to surrender." As Jake looked around the table at his friends, both human and alien, he thought about how much had changed since that first day at the Academy. They had proven that humans belonged among the stars, not by becoming stronger or faster, but by being exactly what they had always been: stubborn, determined, and too foolish to know when they were beaten, and in a galaxy full of powerful beings who knew their limitations. Sometimes the most valuable allies were the ones who did not believe in limitations at all. The next morning, the newly graduated officers boarded transport ships to begin their first assignments. As Jake's ship lifted off from Kepler Prime, he looked down at the Academy where he had learned the most important